Hey everyone, this is Darren with Crazy Minnow Studio, and welcome to the first video for the brand new SALSA LipSync Suite version 2. For this video, we are going to be using Unity version 2019.2.1, which I believe is the latest at the recording of this video. And we will be importing SALSA version 2.1.0, and this is also the latest available at the time of this recording. So first off, you'll notice the directory structure here is a little bit different from version 1. We still have the Crazy Minnow Studio directory here just under assets, and all that's in here right now is examples, and that's all you'll get when you first download this. Now we do install most of our add-ons into this folder as well, but it makes it easy just to get rid of the examples if you don't need them in your project. And you might notice that the examples, there's not a whole lot here, just a single audio file, one scene, and I guess just the box head model. But if you want some more examples, they are available on our downloads site. Under the plugins folder, we've moved all of our core files, and this is just to align us a little bit better with what Unity wants publishers to do with their assets. So let's go ahead and import this real quick. Okay, and the first thing you might notice here is a little warning here on importing of the FBX for Boxhead. And this basically started, I think, Unity 2019.1, and they changed the way they import FBXs and kind of what they look for on that version. And basically it's just saying that the Boxhead model on the blend shapes doesn't have the smoothing normals set, and it's not a big deal. You can go ahead and just clear that, and the model works just fine. So we are going to be discussing the SALSA interface. So let's go ahead and add an empty game object here, and we'll add SALSA. And I just used the add component to add it there. You can also come up to component in the menu, select Crazy Minnow Studio, SALSA LipSync, and SALSA Eyes or Motor. And while I'm in here, I'll make note that we have an add-ons folder. We don't have any add-ons installed for this demo, but we did create this Get New Add-ons link. We had quite a few people that would purchase, and they'd say, hey, I thought SALSA was supposed to do this and that, and I don't see any of this and that, and how do I get it? And so we were hoping that this would help alleviate that problem. So you can just click this, and it will link right to our website where you can enter your email address and your invoice number, and once you've logged in, you'll have access to all of the version 2 downloads. Now, if you're still on version 1, the legacy version, you'll have to get the downloads from this legacy downloads link. This is only for version 2. Okay, so we've got SALSA installed, and let's go through this interface a little bit. First thing you'll notice is that we've got a couple of gold bars and this blue bar. Gold basically means that there's configuration required, and blue means pretty much everything is okay as far as SALSA is concerned. It's got enough information to operate. It doesn't mean it's going to do anything. It just means it has enough information to operate without error. So since references is the first one here, let's look at this. You'll see that we have a couple of things that are required. Audio source, it's red. Q processor's red. We also have these dialog boxes underneath here. Warning saying it's not ready. SALSA requires an audio source, but it can also wait for an audio source if you select one of these other options. We'll go into some of these more advanced options in detail in other videos. And then we've got down here, we've got this emoter, and this is blue, and that's basically because this is optional. So if something's optional and it's minimally configured, then it will be blue, and that means it's good to go. If it's red, it needs to be fixed. So we have these buttons here, add audio source, that will go ahead and create an audio source on this object and link it up for you. And I'll demonstrate that real quick. And then once it does that, so we've got the audio source down here, it turns green, indicating everything's good, but we still have a problem here in our references section, and that's basically because the Q processor is next. Now, if let me unlink this, and we still have this audio source here, and you'll notice now that it says link existing audio source, where before it said add because there wasn't one on this object. Now it just says link because it did find one here. And of course you could use an audio source from a totally different object if you wanted to. You could just drag that object in, link it up, and you're good to go. But we'll go ahead and link the existing one we have here right now. Same thing with Q processor, not ready. We're going to go ahead and add a Q processor, and now you'll notice that our header turned blue, and that means that everything's good to go, at least minimally. Now while I'm here, you'll notice that there's some white text that is indicating that the emoter is not linked. And the reason we've got these up here is just helpers to show you that the stuff that is optional that you might want to look at, it will show you the state of it. so you don't have to open it up to take a peek at it. You can just look at this header bar right here. Same thing with settings. We've got some text here basically saying that we're going to be sampling 512 samples. Dynamics are off and our secondary mix is off. Now, settings is always going to be blue because SALSA will work with whatever settings you have in here. It just may not be exactly what you want. So you'll need to learn what all these settings do to get the most out of SALSA. And we'll go over this section in detail in another video. So let's go ahead and minimize that. Let's go ahead and expand these out here. You'll notice that the interface is pretty dynamic when we expand and collapse it here. And we tried to make it so that we could get this inspector down to a very narrow display and still show everything without providing the horizontal scroll bars that make it so difficult to kind of see settings and whatnot. Pretty much regardless of where you have this set, you'll be able to see most, if not all, of the SALSA interface. Let's go ahead and minimize these again since these are already configured. And we do have one more gold bar here, and this is the Visime configuration. Now, when I look at this, it tells me right off the bat that it's not ready because there's no Visimes defined. We have this button here, New Visime, and when we click this, it will add a Visime, but it's also going to add an expression component here. And you'll see here that this whole section is not ready because we need to link an appropriate controller. And right now we're selected on Shape. We've got several different options here. We're going to work with Shape here for this tutorial. And for Shape, we need a skin mesh. Before I link up a skin mesh, let's go ahead and remove this. Now remember, this was added automatically because SALSA knows you need at least one. But we can go ahead and remove that. And when we do, we see that the Visime's not ready because it doesn't have a component. So each Visime needs one or more components. And SALSA itself needs one or more Visimes. Once I add a component, now we cascade back down. Now we're not ready because the component's not configured. So let me go ahead and drop a box head in here real quick, just because he's got a skin mesh renderer on him and he's easy to configure up. So I'm going to link this in here. And now you'll notice that everything turned blue. And that means that we have the bare minimum that we need for correct SALSA operation. Now, it may not do anything, and it's not going to do anything because there's no audio clip, so there's nothing that's going to play. And we haven't really done anything with our Visime configuration. So if I press play right now, we would see pretty much absolutely nothing. Let's show how this Visime configuration cascades. So I'm going to add another one, and you'll notice that this looks good still, and it's because it copied the configuration from the previous one. And that's a helper so that you don't have to keep dragging and dropping and relinking things and whatnot. So let's go ahead and delete this link. And now we see that this Visime is not configured correctly, and it cascades up to the header. This one's okay, but this one's not. I'm going to hit Control-Z to bring back our link. It also backs up the states of how these were open. That's why I had to go through it a couple times. And now let me collapse this one and open this one, and I'll delete this link. And now we see that this Visime is the one that's causing the problem. This one's okay. So these cascade down to whichever Visime or component is having the problem. So Control-Z, we'll get that back. And you might notice that we have some buttons up here, and these are for the expand and collapse of our Visime configuration. And this first one is collapse, and what that will do is it will collapse everything down to the Visime level. So all we can see here is that we have Visimes. I'll go ahead and add a couple more here. And we have count of 4. So this means we have 4 Visimes. And then on the individual Visimes, we see that we have a trigger display. And this trigger is set by default. It's not a good trigger. It's just set by default. We'll go into configuration of Visimes in the next video. And we see that each of these has one component. So let me go ahead and expand this, and I'll add a couple more components. And then let me click this button down here. So at the bottom of each Visime configuration, we have a fold, which turns into an unfold once we fold it. So what that does is it works on this Visime alone, and it collapses all of the expression components that are attached to this Visime. Now, up here, this is a similar button, but we can expand all Visimes to the Visime level. So we're opening up each Visime. We can see the settings for the Visime, which basically is just the name, preview, display mode, and trigger. and it keeps all of the components collapsed. It's similar to this, except this particular one works on the components in a particular visime. So we've expanded to all visimes. Now this third button expands all visimes and all components. So this can get pretty long if you have a pretty detailed configuration here. And you can likewise come back in here and fold these back up individually. So that is the expand and collapse buttons. So that covers all of our expand and collapse options, both on the overall visime and also on the individual visime. And let's go ahead and collapse everything back to the visime level. And you'll notice that we've got these sort buttons, so you can move these around. The way SALSA in particular works is it operates from the lowest to the highest. So visime 0 is the lowest trigger. Let me go ahead and show you the trigger mode here. So this would be the first one to be triggered, second, third, fourth. Okay, so the order is important in SALSA. So you can adjust the order if you want to change what visime you've got set up. You can change that with these. So if I want to pull this one up to the top one, then I can, and I can keep pushing him down, and I can make him the bottom one if I want, or I can push him back up. Once they get up to the top or the bottom, you can't go any further. These buttons do nothing. You can also delete visimes. I'll go ahead and remove a couple here, and you can do the same thing on the individual components. You can remove like this. Now, you also notice that there's a copy button here. So this copy works within this particular module, SALSA module, and you can copy and paste components from one visime to another. So if I want to copy this particular component to the visime down below it here, visime number 3, then I can do that. So to copy, I click copy, and if I did that on accident, I can hit cancel again. But if I copy that one, I can paste it right down here, and it basically, well, it was already the same, so I'm not getting anything new. But that's how you would copy one to another. If you want to copy one to a brand new one, then you would go ahead and add another component, and then do a copy, and then paste on that new one. Okay, and we'll probably demonstrate this more in a future video, but this checkbox out here is basically to enable or disable a component, and this is more for design time stuff. So if you're configuring stuff and you're like, well, I'm not sure that one does what I want it to do, when you're in preview mode, you can turn these on and off, and it will turn on or off the selected component, and you can get a better feel for what it looks like with or without it. Okay, let's collapse this up. Let's go ahead and add an emoter in here real quick. And we see that emoter has basically the same stuff, so we're not going to go into this too much. Basically references, we can go ahead and link this same Q processor, and that's recommended, so that anything that is conflicting can be sorted out by the Q processor. Let's go ahead and link that. We see references is now blue. And then it's the same deal with emote configuration. So I'll just throw one in here real quick. We need to link our box head in here for the shape, and now everything's good. So emoter and SALSA work almost exactly the same. We'll show eyes here real quick. Eyes is quite a different beast, and this is mainly because there's a lot of different things going on here in eyes. Eyes handles head, eye, and eyelid movement, and they have a little bit more constraints into how everything is moved. So basically, we don't know what you want to do. These don't have to be configured, and so we don't want to show that they need to be configured when you're not going to use them. But if you do have eyes on here, at a minimum in the system properties, you need to make sure that your references are linked up. And system properties is pretty much the same thing as references and settings in the other two. They're all kind of rolled up in here. And we can see that we don't have a Q processor linked. Tells us we don't have a Q processor linked. Go ahead and link it, and then everything is good to go. And that's going to wrap it up for this video. In the next video, we will go through configuring the visimes in SALSA in a little bit more detail. And thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.